Hello class, this is Professor Jesse Shaw. I'm going to be your drawing instructor this semester. I teach drawing and printmaking here at TAMIU. I wanted to make this video uh, to fill in for our first day. I sent you an email kind of telling you why I'm not there on campus today. Um, I'm out of town. I'm doing a print show in a couple different cities. And so I'm put together this slideshow for you, and also I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing, like why I'm not at school. Like I am, this print fair that I put on every year, and tell you a little bit about it. So here we're looking at a sketch. This is a sketch for the Sistine Chapel done by Michelangelo, and we're going to return back to this in just a moment. Okay. So I teach printmaking, and that's the medium in which I do most of my work in. And printmaking is very much rooted in drawing. Actually, whatever you do, this is a foundational course. So if you get into ceramics or digital works or sculptural or conceptual, drawing is still the foundation of all those mediums. It's one of the most important classes you take because learning how to draw isn't so much about, being able to draw, a great picture. It's about learning how to see and how to judge space. So we'll be talking more about that a little bit later. So I don't know, maybe about, I think 16, 17 years ago, somewhere in there, I was in a class very much like the one we're going to be having this semester. You're drawing one class, and when you take all your classes in school, you take a little bit of this and that. You might take painting, you might take ceramics, you might take printmaking, you might take sculpture. And when I did my first print, that was it. That was what I've been looking for. It's very much based in drawing, but you can make multiples. So over the past 4 or 5 years, I've been putting on a print fair, which is an event where vendors from all over, you can see I have vendors listed here, from all over, they gather and show what they have been working on, and it's affordably priced, and people come and buy prints, and collect. So over the summer, I've been cranking out quite a bit of prints. These are lino cuts, which is basically a stamp type process, and you can see they're all different colors, so that means they were all inked up and printed in different colors. So I did 50 of these, but they're all one of a kind. Another print's taking from a linoleum block, and I converted it to a silk screen. Silk screen is where you push ink through a mesh, which is the screen, and that ink hits the paper, and then it's basically a stencil. So I made a couple posters, this one, and I made this one, which I call South Texas Sunburn. And what's nice about prints, and especially silk screen, is you can change up the colors really quickly and, do several different versions and, play with transparencies in the ink. But all these images that I'm showing you, they started off as a sketch on, they started off as a sketch. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about in this class, I can definitely relate to what I'm currently making, because like I said, it's those foundational skills. So this is another linoleum block print, which is, like I said, a stamp. So I prefer to work in prints. What I like about printmaking is you can make many multiples. So for example, this print, I've made 20 of these in black and white, and they're all considered an original. A print is just, it's made from a single matrix, but you can make as many as you'd like. And I put on a fair every year. I didn't do one last year because of, the pandemic. But I do a show in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is where I was living before I moved to Laredo. And it's invitation only, and I invite artists that either I've met along the way in my career, or I admire their work, through seeing it in other galleries or books or on social media, or they're artists that I'd been following and admire their work since I was a student. Uh, like this fair that I put on is relatively small. It's put on in Easton, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half from New York and an hour and a half from Philadelphia. And there's a pretty good group population there that, loves art, supports art, buys art, and but they might not go to New York, to buy art. So I bring a lot of artists from New York and, from Chicago and from Philly and from Florida and from all over. Then we have this show. Here's our group photo from the last one. So like I said, some of these artists I've known for a while. Some of them I like I said, I met them through just following the work. But that's the thing about printmaking is, you're not really on an island with printmaking. There's always a small community built in just about everywhere, including here in Laredo. So when I first moved to Pennsylvania, before putting on this show, I was really excited to go to the show in New York, which was put on by Martin Mazzora of Cannonball Press. That's the guy pointing at the camera here. The guy with the slick hair pointing at the camera at the front row. He's one of my inspirations, ever since I was a student. When I took my first print class 16 years ago. But he would put on a show in Brooklyn, one night only, called Prints Gone Wild, and he invited everybody from all over to, print shops, artists, and it was a one night only cash and carry kind of show. And tons of people would go and buy prints and collect. And, some printmakers like Dennis McNett, that's who's on the wall back there, Drive By Press. These are all, pretty well known in the print world. And they would do this event one night only, and I would go and I would drive to New York and I would have a pretty good idea of what kind of prints I wanted to collect, because most of these fairs, the prints are usually within the price of $20 to $200 a print, most falling in the, like the $20-$40 range. So it's inexpensive, not that that's not a lot of money, but as far as art goes, it's an easy way to collect a lot of work. To collect artists that you like is buying prints. And when I'm talking about prints, I'm not necessarily talking about digital prints or giclée prints. I'm talking about prints that are made by hand using traditional methods. And that's what most of these fairs are. It's, keeping that whole tradition alive of making prints in an analog way. Not to say that digital is not included in that, but that's mostly what it is. So I moved to Texas, 3 years ago. I started teaching here at Texas A&M International. And, I teach, like I said, I teach drawing and I teach printmaking because, those are my two mediums that I generally work in. Like I said, I do prints and my prints are drawings, And so this is a big fair that I take my print students to every year, minus the last year when it was canceled. Hopefully they'll have it again this year or in 22. I'm keeping my ear to the ground on that one. But I'll take, my group of students to go see what's going on in Austin. You can see this is a huge print fair, much bigger than the one that I put on. I think there's like 50 to 60 vendors at this one, where the one I put on is like 12 to 13. And there you see Martin again, the guy right down here in the corner, the first booth. He's an amazing artist. You give him a zip code, he'll go there and he'll sell some prints. Yeah, great guy, and he's been, being a print troubadour for as long as I've known him. And so yeah, at these kind of events, you can kind of just walk around, check out the work. You can talk to the artist. It's a good place as an artist. It's a good place to network and meet other people. You can find out about other shows, find out about other events. Talk printmaking, talk, how did you make that? And printmakers are always ones that'll share their secrets, as far as their methods and how they make their stuff. So at this fair, there's a lot of everything. There's people that are making like rock posters for Metallica and stuff like that, and then there's artists that are making like high end more gallery type work. And everything in between. So this is a kind of show where you can go in there and buy a few buttons, pins, a T-shirt, a couple posters, or you can go in there and buy some really high-end gallery work from internationally known artists. So there's usually a good crowd of collectors, um, people that are just going to look for, you buy a house, you gotta fill up the walls, So a lot of people go to buy things that they're going to put on their walls. Some people buy just to collect, and then you have also students that go, they go to actually, learn from other artists and just see what's going out there contemporary in printmaking. I usually will try, like the last time we went to Coronado Studio. So this is me with print students, and we're talking to Pepe Coronado, and he's telling us about his shop and what they do there. And we'll go there. We'll visit like Flatbed. We'll basically visit a couple galleries. And here's our group photo from leaving the print fair there. So you can see we're all did a little bit of collecting, did a little shopping. It's hard to go in there and like, wow, not pick up something because everything's really well priced, really well made, and it's a good time. So now that things are starting to open up again, and these things are starting to happen once again. Another big show is Southern Graphics Council. That's like the really large one. That one takes place in a different city every year. From this photo, this was in Dallas, and I went to that one a couple years ago. And it's usually like thousands of people. It's like the Comic-Con for printmaking. Another small show in Texas is UFOs over Lubbock in Lubbock, Texas. I'll probably do that one again this year if it's still on. I did it a couple years ago. And then over the summer I did Paper Trail, which is in San Antonio, which is a nice show. I like it. It's a little more of the punk rock and roll kind of crowd. It's a lot of these things are kind of like parties. They'll have a DJ, and sometimes they'll have them like sponsored by breweries and things like that. So it's really like it's a low anxiety kind of venue, doing these kind of print shows. But I wanted to share that with you because, you're going into drawing, you're at the very beginning of your academic career here at TAMU. And, I know when I was a student, when I took my first printmaking class, I had no idea what it was, let alone how big and how much of a community and how many opportunities there are within that one medium. Because printmaking, you can be a painter and make prints. You can be a sculptor and make prints. You could work just in drawing and make prints of your drawings. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on that's what I'm doing right now. I'm probably, helping out at the gallery, and then tomorrow I'll be getting on a plane and coming back to Laredo. And then in our first class, I'll probably go over the syllabus. I've sent you the syllabus. If you have any questions about it, you can, send me an email, but I'll be there the next class and we can talk about it and go over the room and talk about a little bit more about what your first exercises will be and how the class will go. Okay? So that's what I'm doing. I'm just out there, and it just happened to land on the first week of school with all this going on. But yeah, sometimes when you're, just think about this going forward. Like sometimes you're the person being invited to do these kind of things, like do shows or do fairs or do events. And then sometimes you're the person that's organizing them, and each is both an important job. And so this is, I organize this show. Like I said, it's a good way to, help others, but also, you get to know people, and, you can, have a vision of a show. And, like when I was telling you about the Prince Gone Wild, that show in New York, when those were going on, I wasn't far enough along in my career to be in that show. So I ended up doing a show with Martin in Miami. And then when I got back, I approached some gallery owners that I knew in Easton. They were wanting, to do a show, and I said, "Man, we should do a fair, a print fair, just like they do in New York, and do it the same way." And and then I ended up inviting Missouri first. So sometimes you got to make your own. You got to make your own events. You got to make your own thing. Just keep that in mind just going forward. It's good advice. Don't always expect for people to come knocking down your door. Sometimes you just got to make your own door. Okay, let's get down to drawing. Okay, so I just showed you this photo. I told you it was Michelangelo. As you can see, it is it's a sketch, Conte sketch. What I do want to point out about this, and I hope you can see. Hold on one second. Okay. I hope you can see my pointer. This is a really low-tech video. This is the first time me recording off of a slideshow, but what I want you to look at is this toe on the right. Okay, look at the one at the bottom, this big toe. You see the toenail? There's just something not quite right with it. Then you look at the one in the middle. You can see it's a little closer, something not quite right. And then you look at the one on the top. You see that? See how the toenail, it wraps around as it should in proportion and in perspective? That's a big part of what this class is about. It's about you're putting down something, you're drawing what you think, you're drawing what you see. It's all about observation. But then you're also like questioning it and trying to figure out, well, something's not right. What is it? And so here I can tell you the difference is, see how it ends too abrupt, and this follows through. So drawing and learning how to draw is making a lot of decisions, trusting your observational skills, but then questioning your observational skills, and then refining. Okay? You can see, and there's a lot going on in this drawing. What's nice about this drawing is you can see how the drawing is made. So you can see the further we get away from the shoulders, the more you can see these hatch marks. This drawing is made up of just many marks and mark making, going different directions, hatching to create the illusion of shadow, which then makes the illusion of light. And here we see the finished one, the finished painting, right? So that was just a study, a drawing for his fresco painting. There was a movie made in the 60s called Lust for Life, and it starred Charlton Heston as Michelangelo. And what's cool about the movie is they show a little bit about, how those paintings were made. And the way that they would do these huge murals is they would draw them on paper. And when I say them, it wasn't done by just one person. Michelangelo had a team of people. And they would make these drawings, in charcoal, line drawings, and then they would poke these tiny little holes all the way around the lines. And then they would hold it up to the wet fresco paint, and they would have a bag of charcoal, and they would blot the paper, and where those holes were, it would allow the charcoal to go through. So then when they take the paper off, they basically made a stencil, right? It's like a connect the dots kind of thing. And then from there, they could, they knew they had all the proportions right, so they weren't making it up on the fly. It was already pre-figured out, and then they were just redrawing and repainting it again. So that whole idea of poking holes through it and patting it and pushing the charcoal to the other side, that is a form of printmaking right there. You're working from a matrix, and you're doing something that is transferring from one to another. So I thought that was interesting. Lust for Life. So you probably recognize these drawings, these very beautiful anatomy drawings from Leonardo da Vinci. They're so precise, meticulous, perspective, shape. They're brilliant, right? So these are the kind of notebooks that you'll see printed on posters and, printed on various objects, and people that's what makes these iconic. What you won't see printed on, a tote bag or something at a museum gift shop is something like this drawing. So these are studies of horses that I'm going to show you. So you can see in these the horse face, something's, they're a little caricature-ish. You can see in the body of the horse, its arms are a little little short. There's something not right about the components making up the body. It's just a loose sketch. Let's go to another one. This one's a little bit lower resolution, but same thing. Look how big the rump of this horse. It's huge compared to the legs, compared to the upper torso. it's just not in proportion. Go to the next one. Okay, this one looks a little bit better, but it's a little stiff. The arms, shoulders, you can see the struggle. You can see the struggle of not knowing, not knowing something's wrong, right? It's a really blurry sketch, but same thing. Look like kind of looks a little wide, this horse. And I'm not just talking trash about his horse. I'm trying to, I'm getting to a point. It's coming up, okay? And then here's a bunch of horses, and they all look like little dogs, right? Little dogs. So, these are all drawings that he was making for, these really large murals that he's working on. So here we can start to see some, okay, I'm going to take this a little slower, a little serious, and I'm going to divide and conquer this horse. And you're going to hear me use that term a lot in this class, divide and conquer. You can't get, if you see you're struggling on something, you just got to isolate that and figure it out. Same thing with Michelangelo's toe. So you can see just drawing the back leg, just getting the back leg, just looking at, okay, neck to the torso to the legs, the length. Are all these in proportion to one another? Same thing here. You start seeing these lines, like looking at, okay, well, how wide is this part compared to this part? It's sight measurement. If you know that the shoulder or whatever is this big, and you compare it to this, then you can know if this is slimmer or needs to be wider. If you compare one thing to another. But as long as you got one thing right, you can compare it and, judge everything else off of that one distance. You can also see that in the face, too. Like, you see these like lines starting to grid it out. He's starting to wireframe this horse. And here you see it at the ultimate, right? Breaking it down using math, looking at breaking anything into quadrants, looking at specific angles, writing the distance between this line and this line and this line and this line, all broken down. This is like wireframing, like you would see in like a video game program or some kind of 3D model render. And then once he had that, you can see the improvement, right? You can see now he can twist the arm around different ways, bend it different ways, and he can give this thing some action. He had to draw it very static in order to do that. Had to invest more in the initial observation to get that. And then what do? You move on to the back legs, right? So here's a sculptor. I talked about Easton, Pennsylvania, where I'm going, where I am right now. And here is the courthouse in Lehigh Valley. That's, in the same, Easton is in Lehigh Valley. And there is an exact replica of one of his horses in that city. They have a bronze. There's a couple of them all over the world, but yeah, they have one there, and you can see that arm, right? So I think some of that stuff that I showed you were studies for paintings. Some of them were studies for sculpture statues. The statue was never made during his lifetime. It was made afterwards. All right, so that's accuracy. Talking about accuracy in drawing. Now let's talk about line and line weight. Right? So one thing you'll be working on over the semester is line weight and line direction. So here's some drawings from Van Gogh, right? You draw a line really, really, really light, like the ones near the sun. You give the illusion of distance. You give the illusion of atmospheric perspective, And you can see as lines get closer and closer, like these lines go a little bit lighter in the middle, and then they get darker. They get thick and then thinner. He changes different directions, and that creates volume, and it creates shadow, and it creates the illusion of light and the illusion of shadow, and all those things working together, give you an idea of okay, this is somewhat believable, even though it's a very stylistic interpretation of the countryside, right? Implied lines, like see how this is really a line, but it is a line. It's a line because everything kind of goes up to that edge where this guy's walking, and it creates this line, this path that he's walking down. Same thing with this. This is not a line, it's just a line of dots, but we read it as a line. Same thing. These are all ink wash kind of drawings. You can see him using stippling to create the illusion of like gray. So yeah, it's always great to look at some of these drawings and study them, especially once we get into. And we'll do this from time to time. Look at drawings and talk about like, well, how were they made? You know, but there's a lot of interesting things here. There's repetition, but there's variety in the marks, and that creates the illusion of something organic. This fountain, perspective. Have a nice ellipse here, which is a circle in perspective. You can see the directions of the marks. Like, see how these marks are going with the stone? They go this way and then they fall down this way and fall down. The marks, if you're looking on the stones, they go with the direction that the stone is going. Same thing with the trees. Like you can start to see how the lines wrap around the branches, and that helps push the illusion that it's three-dimensional. It's in the round. If you're making your marks that are going in the direction of, the way the thing is shaped, then it's going to read more so like it's in that shape, unless it was, if you did the opposite, and went against it, it would stick out and look flat. So yeah, he had a really good handle on understanding space and creating the illusion through, simple marks, like these leaves, just a couple marks here and there. It's like, that's a leaf. It reads as a leaf. That's all you need. We'll talk about the gestural drawing. This is a drawing by Rembrandt. A gestural drawing is a drawing done within a matter of seconds. If you look at this drawing, you can barely see where he picked up the pencil and it was all almost done in a continual line. And just from those marks, he's gotten the gesture and the body language of these two women with the child. And that's something that, also we're talking about what's a good drawing. Like, this is a great drawing. It took him 30 seconds. This is a great drawing. It took him, I don't know how many hours. So, but what makes these successful drawings is, well, they're creating the illusion. They're from observation, Let's see. Let's take a look at some of his other drawings. So Rembrandt made portraits of himself throughout his entire life, and a lot of them were really small, like 2 inches by 2 inches. Some were like little ink drawings like this, real sketchy, and some were etchings. So etching is a printmaking technique where you have a piece of metal, a flat piece of metal, and you take a knife, a needle, and you scratch in, and everywhere where you scratch leaves a little trench. And then you fill the trench with ink, you wipe away the excess, and then you basically print it. You push it through an etching press, which pulls the ink out, and that's what makes the line. But if you look at the, like I said, the direction of his line, on his jacket, he's using very straight lines, very, sharp hatch marks. But then when he gets over to the hair and the hat, his lines get, his line work is more, fluid, and and as he gets to the face, those lines get shorter and more dense. So it's creating like a volume. Here's him as a young man, like the fur coat. That's another thing. Drawing texture. We'll be talking about drawing texture. How to make something look the way that it actually feels in your hands is another challenge. Another challenge is how to quickly identify light and shadow, midtones. You have your shadow, you have your midtones, which are in between, and then you have your highlights. So this is another drawing of his, just a quick sketch, just identifying, okay, where's the shadow, where's the light, where are the darkest shadows? Quick ink sketch. Another quick ink sketch of a lion. A lion's not going to sit there, wait for you all day to draw it. So this is a very quick study. So one thing that you'll get in this class is, like I said at the beginning, you will learn how to see. You'll know what to look for. It's one of the more difficult things in drawing because you got to know where to look. you got to look at your paper when you're drawing, and you want to be able to shorten that time down as much as possible. So at one point, you have to just kind of trust that your hands are following your eyes in what you see. Trying to get a one-to-one connection there, eye-hand coordination. And something like this would be a drawing that would challenge, how good or how well you've gotten at that skill. And also, there's line sensitivity. This is done with an ink brush. If you're not very aware of the material that you're drawing with, for example, the shape of it, like if you have a brush and you go really heavy sideways, you might get a thicker line than if you go, use just the tip of the brush. Same thing with charcoal. We're going to be using a lot of charcoal in this class, and it changes shape as you draw. Also, pressure. How much pressure? You put down a lot of pressure, things are going to go dark. You want to be really light, you got to be really light with your pressure. So there's all these things that you're going to be juggling as you learn how to draw. One more quick sketch from Rembrandt. Fast, loose, but you can see the woman sleeping. And like I said, very clever, smart, use of line. Okay. Every so often I'll show you some contemporary artists using drawing in different ways. So this drawing is from Oscar Munoz. These are very much like gesture drawings too. They're quickly done. He is drawing with water on a hot sidewalk. So what you see, if you go from left to right, is he draws the face, and as he's drawing the face, it's already starting to disappear. So it's nothing. It only exists for a moment. And the drawing exists as a video or a set of still imagery. So it's drawing, right? He is drawing, but the drawing doesn't exist after he's done with it. The drawing is the act of drawing. And Oscar Munoz does work about, he's a Colombian artist, and he does a lot of work about people disappearing. Whether that be through cartel violence, or it could be through corrupt government, but people that have just disappear. And he's done this kind of work in different ways, but that was during this time in his career, that was a main theme. So sometimes drawing is used for the act of drawing, So here's another drawing, but it's not a drawing. It's a sculpture. It's got all these wires everywhere, and you can't tell what it is. What this is a piece by Kentridge, William Kentridge. He's a South African artist, and this thing that you see, the sculpture, it spins around slowly, and once it spins to the right spot, then you read it as a drawing. So you see the woman, the opera singer, but you only see it in that one window of opportunity. Then it keeps spinning, and then you lose it again, right? So I think that's an interesting way of drawing, because this could all be broken down. Looking at it just like we are now, it looks flat. It looks like a drawing on paper, but it's not a drawing on paper. It's a drawing in 3 dimensions in space, using materials that make up the illusion that it's a drawing. Let's talk about emotional content in work. Another artist like Rembrandt, Kathy Kollwitz, German artist. She had lost a son in World War I and lost her husband during World War I as well. She was labeled a degenerate artist by the Nazis and had to flee Germany. As an artist, she couldn't, live or work there, and she did self-portraits of herself all her life. I think this is one of my favorite ones because it shows you a couple of different things. If you look at her hands, see that little nub? That is a little piece of charcoal, and you'll be drawing with that this semester. What tells me in this drawing is I think this self-portrait is she's looking at a mirror which is reflected to another mirror that is giving her a profile. So she's drawing her profile by looking forward and ahead and drawing. But what I like about the drawing is, see the way that she's holding the material? If you look at her arm, you see the width of that mark that kind of zigzags. That's exactly what that tool will do if you're drawing with it, just like that. It'll make that kind of a mark. So it's a self-aware, the materials are self-aware. The use of the materials are self-aware in that. And she draws with a lot of different materials, pen and ink, using white ink. And she mostly draws, women during times of wartime, women and children. And, so I look at this image, and then I look at artists contemporary. For example, like Swoon. Like Kathy Kollwitz is very prolific at drawing, but she's well known as a printmaker. So this is a woodcut. That means it's a drawing that was drawn on wood and carved out and printed. And then I look at this drawing, which is a print as well, and I can see, even though I don't know if Swoon, that's this artist, Swoon is the artist, I don't know for sure if she was inspired by Kathy Kollwitz, but I'm pretty sure she was inspired by Kathy Kollwitz. I'm inspired by Kathy Kollwitz. I think, so I want to tell you, like, looking back and looking at artists, as you're going through your foundation class, another one of your classes you'll be taking over the semester is your art history classes. And those are the classes that really, you feel like you're in those classes, you're just learning about these things that have already been done. But what you're really getting is things that have been done, but, now they can be revisited in a contemporary manner. And knowing all that history is one of the most important things you can know as an artist. You got to know what's going on in the contemporary art world, and you got to know what's happened before. So she works in paper cuts and stencils, and she mostly works in street art. So she takes her prints, she cuts them up, she glues them to the sides of buildings, and then makes these beautiful, collage type pieces. I look at something like this. I'm trying to think of the artist, and man, it's just not coming to me. But I tell you, when I'm looking at this, I see a beautiful example of atmospheric perspective, right? This is, the color of everything, it's really light. It feels like there's an atmosphere. It feels like there is mist in the air from this waterfall. And when I look at somebody like Koichi Yamamoto, who works in drawing, this drawing is a monotype, where you take a big piece of plexiglass, you roll up ink on top of it, and then you smear the ink, and you take away the ink, and then what's left behind is the drawing, and then that is pressed into a piece of paper. So you get one print, but it's a drawing. It's a drawing you did on plexiglass with ink, and then you print it. But compare these two, and I can see the resemblance. I can see the old stuff in the new stuff. I'm sure he might not know of this particular work, or might not even been thinking about it or whatever, but some of the intentions were there, as far as trying to create this illusion of space. So early drawing of 1-point perspective. We'll be going over 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective. We'll be talking about all that. That's going to come very early in the semester. But I look at this, and then I look at a Frank Miller comic, right? Frank Miller, he did Sin City. And his use of 1-point perspective with this guy in this cell, it makes it even more apparent that this guy is alone and he is locked up and he is not going anywhere, right? So he effectively used a perspective to enhance the mood of the content, which is done a lot in comic books. Like, you have to think kind of like a cinematographer, right? Same thing with this print. This is a Hopper. Hopper, he is known for doing the Nighthawks painting, but anyways, see this bird's eye view? It's kind of similar, using perspective to push the content. So that's why we learn perspective. We learn perspective so we can learn how to use it to push our content in our work. This is a wireframe. I think this was done in 1620 of a, it's some kind of like chalice or something. But, you cannot look at this and then go, immediately think like video games or think 3D modeling. I've been playing this game called Res, which is all made up of like wireframes, and you're like this being who's flying through this space, but it's all wireframes. It's all things that are just built out of geometry. Um, but people had been thinking about that long before. This from the Renaissance, late Renaissance. I also want to talk about how worlds, like these paintings by Andrew Wyeth. I don't know if you've seen this painting, but it's probably one of his most famous paintings. And this, along with his other paintings that he did in Pennsylvania, and I think he also painted a lot in, I believe, Maine. But it's these paintings that have influenced countless movies. You can see like there's the Jesse James movie. There's that movie. I can't remember what it was called, but it's a Shyamalan movie. So many movies have been inspired. The Last of Us Part 2. There's some of the scenes in that video game were inspired by, the things that he drew and the way that he drew them in this world that he created. So, a lot of his but it's all observational drawing, which is, like I said, going to be the cornerstone of this class. There will be times we do a couple different kind of exercises, but for the most part, it's observational drawing what you see. We work with a lot of still lifes, and I'll take you through a series of steps that get harder and more complicated as we go along. And I like teaching this class because everybody improves more in this class than any other class, because it's like going to the gym every day, except you're drawing. You're working out your drawing skills. So an example of some of the things where we start, like I said, we'll start with perspective, just try and draw simple shapes. Then we start to talk about, illusion of light. You will be doing drawings in sketchbooks. We'll learn about hatch marks, creating volume with marks, different type of mark making. We'll talk about texture, like I said earlier, like how to draw texture so something looks the way that you actually, it looks the way it actually feels. How light bends, how refraction works. Drawing various types of objects. We're going to mostly use charcoal, but we'll use pencil. We will do some ink drawing. We'll draw things that are, it's all about, the architecture, and you have to be kind of an engineer to figure out, how to correctly draw it, like how to take it apart, like, visually, like piece by piece, like, okay, this is a cylinder, this sits on a box, which sits on a cylinder, that kind of thing. And then we'll draw things that are a little bit harder to put your finger on, like, how they're built, where you really just have to build it by, like drawing flowers, for example. You have to draw the shadows and the light to draw flowers. We'll also, by the end of class, we'll start doing some anatomy. We'll start drawing, working on some basics, that will improve you going forward. If you take life drawing, you take drawing 2, things that'll help you there. And then, like I said, most people drawing still lifes that just keep getting a little more complicated and involved. Someday at the beginning, most of our drawings will be done in, like one sitting, but by the end, we'll be doing drawings that, you sit for 3 days on work on a drawing, fully realized drawings. And these are all past students, and they're all different ones, so it's not a fluke. Everybody's going to improve, especially by committing to your sketchbook and showing up and be ready for class at the beginning of class, because I usually start my demos right when we get there. So, again, I will see you very soon. If you have any questions, you can send me an email about the syllabus. Like I said, I'll go over the syllabus again, and then we'll start next class with an exercise. Okay? I will see you then. Take care.